All right, here we are. We're finally live, you guys. Sorry for the delay there. I have brought someone with me today for Top Trades Live who we haven't had on before from the Paradigm Multiverse right here. We're making our way around to some different interesting editors that we have. And one of my favorites is with me today. This is Davis Wilson. Davis is the editor of Million Mission. And if you haven't read Million Mission before, I highly recommend you do so. I am going to put the link in the chat right now. And the reason that I'm having Davis on today is because he is a brilliant fundamental guy. He makes big bets on some of the best stocks that we talk about and that we like to trade as well. He's got some strong opinions out there on some pretty big names like Tesla for one and Nvidia for number two. And since Nvidia is reporting earnings tomorrow, I thought we'd have him on to discuss what we might expect from the earnings announcement. But what I want to get to first is Tesla, because Davis recently had dinner with a Tesla engineer. Is that correct, Davis? A Tesla engineer?
A Tesla senior battery engineer,
There
yes.
we go, a Tesla senior battery engineer. And I love to hear these inside perspectives from companies because you can learn so much more talking about somebody who is actually in the trenches every day working for these big companies than you can from reading some analyst report or some sort of news story. It's amazing how different the narratives are once you talk to somebody who really knows the ins and outs of a company. So I wanted to pick Davis's brain about what the heck is going on over at Tesla and whether or not they're still the world beater electric car, electric everything super company that the street still maybe thinks they are. So I want
Yeah.
to get into some of that. But first, Davis, just to intro you to our crew of traders we have listening to this call every week, tell us more about Million Mission and what your mission is with the letter and with your investing.
Yeah, we'll do. Gunnar, thanks for having me. So the Million Mission is really what it seems like. I'm taking my own money, starting with $100,000 and turning that into $1 million through the stock market, probably options primarily as well. Um, I've got a background where I've 10x'd my money more than a few times, right? 10x, 20x, I've got a 40x, and I've got a 70x that we were just talking about as well. And so I'm using the same strategies that I took to do that. I've also got a background in venture capital. If people are familiar with venture capital, that's basically investing in startup companies, right? Those are the riskiest investments that you can make. Our best VC investment, 2000x our money, right? That pays for a lot of losers. That makes a lot of people happy and rich along the way too. And so what I'm doing is I'm taking a lot of those strategies, right, in venture capital and applying that to the stock market, which not many people do, but it works. And so that's the Million Mission. I write it Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. I don't trade too often. I've been doing it for about a year. I've got 4 trades so far. One's been doing great, the others fanned out. However, we're still up on the year. Um, I do think as well that although I don't trade that much, if anybody reads the Million Mission, you will be a better investor afterwards as well. I write a lot about what's going on in the market, what I learned, my mistakes, things like that as well. I talk about Nvidia and Tesla a lot, like you said. So happy to get into those.
Well, so one of the reasons I like Million Mission though isn't because of the frequency of your trading. It's because of how in depth you get into some of
Mhm.
these ideas, which I think is really important. If you're trying to make a big move in your portfolio, I think the biggest mistakes you can make are over trading, number one. And number two is just diversifying needlessly. Like, why stretch your brain and your capital into 20 different plays when you can just really get down into, the nitty gritty and figure out what you believe are the best two, three investments and just go heavy into them and see what happens, right?
I totally agree. People want to be an expert in every single industry, right? But what if you just focus on one, right? With me, it's it's large cap tech. I pay attention to the stocks that everybody wants to talk about. Everybody knows they're easy to understand, right? Nvidia's easy to understand, Google's easy to understand, so is Tesla. And I place options trades on the highest quality of those stocks when they're out of favor, right?
Yeah.
We've seen this V-shaped recovery time after time in the last 10, 15, 20 years. I place options trades when I think that setup's happening again. And over, it's printed money.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it. So let's get right into Tesla. Now, in your dinner with a Tesla insider piece, the first thing that I want you to talk about that really struck me with this was the idea that battery range doesn't really matter, because I feel like that goes against everything we've been told about the electric car industry. Everybody's been fighting for so long to get higher range and range anxiety and all that stuff. And it's like, how are people in rural areas going to be adopting these cars if we don't have the range to get them places? And, it needs to move beyond just the city commuter crowd. And now your guy, your engineer, your battery engineer is telling us, well, that really doesn't matter in the long term. So if you could get into that idea for us, I think that's really fascinating.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? I
Yeah.
sat down with this guy and I expected, so he manages a team of engineers that builds battery cells for Tesla. Um, I expected the entire conversation to be about squeezing a couple extra miles out of a Tesla battery cell. Immediately, he goes, actually, that's not really what we do. And I say, what do you mean? What do you do? Um, and he goes, well, it depends on your thoughts around autonomous vehicles. And I go, what do you mean? And he goes, well, in an all autonomous world, people aren't owning cars anymore, right? People are hailing the nearest Tesla or Robotaxi or Waymo, whatever it is, to come pick them up and drop them off. And so at that point, battery range isn't nearly as important because whenever a Robotaxi is low on charge, they go recharge near a supercharger or whatever, and then come back online. And so we talked a lot about the autonomous future that Tesla is actively building for, right? Of course, they need to sell cars right now. That is their cash cow. That is what is keeping them in business. But Tesla, I think more so than I bet you Ford and GM aren't thinking this way. They are thinking 10 years into the future, building out this entire ecosystem around AVs, the
Right.
software, the charging infrastructure, the maintenance, the cleaning, right? You got to clean these things eventually too. They're thinking about that stuff, whereas I guarantee you a Ford and GM are not thinking about these things.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. And I'm kind of on the fence about the idea of a fully autonomous fleet being something that becomes universal. And maybe I'm not thinking far ahead enough into the future,
It's
but
tough.
when I think of cars, I mean cars are so American, and owning cars is such an American thing, and I feel like it's such an important thing in the American economy. And people look at cars, more so than just transportation. They're like little trophies too. They advertise your status to the world and everything else. And I think it's going to be difficult to break that type of psychological hold that the automobile has on people. Um, and just living in this world where you're just constantly hailing these driverless vehicles, it just seems almost unfathomable to me. But I can see how we move in
Yeah,
that direction. I mean, is Tesla banking on that's the way it has to be, or is it's inevitable, or are they seeing other alternative realities emerging in the future for us too?
for Tesla though, it's what is Tesla? Are they a car company? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they make cars, but they make a fraction of the cars that Ford, GM, Toyota make,
Hmm.
but they're valued at 20 times the value as a Ford or GM, legitimately 20 times the value. And so maybe, and I'm just thinking this through right now, maybe for Tesla, they have to be a robotaxi, a humanoid robot company, um, to one, live up to their valuation, but two, I'll go back to the Steve Jobs quote, like people don't know what they want until you show it to them, right? Um, I know living here in Austin, Texas, that there are plenty of people that do not want to own cars. They want to just Uber everywhere, save that money. It's, you know, depending on who you ask, you can save money or it's just a little bit extra to Uber everywhere. I think it's a situation where Tesla doesn't want to be a car company for their entire existence. They don't want to compete with the legacy automakers. There's too many of them. Their production lines are too efficient. Eventually, cars are going to be commoditized anyway. Everybody's going to sell EVs with the same battery range and the same specs and everything like that.
Right.
I think Tesla is taking it upon themselves to say, here's another option. We're going to be a one-stop shop to give people that option. And I think a lot of people are going to take it. Do I think Tesla deserves to trade at 200 times earnings right now because of it? Absolutely not. Uh, but I think that that's what Elon's thinking. He's thinking 10 years ahead. He always does.
Right.
Ford and GM, those other legacy automakers just don't think that way.
Well, you mentioned like Tesla living up to its valuation, or I guess meeting expectations for its valuation, however you want to put it. I think if you have that argument for Tesla, and I'm kind of on the fence about this, um, if you have this argument that Tesla is going to come out on top, then you have to believe that they are going to have the penultimate self-driving software that forces everyone to
Yeah.
license it. And that's the only way for them to
Yeah.
really move forward here. And I assume you agree with that assessment.
I agree with that assessment. I do not see how that can be the case, right? I live in Austin, Texas. If I look out my window right now, within 20 seconds, I will see a Waymo driving down the street. Within 20 seconds, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
For some reason, investors think that we're going to wake up one day and Teslas are going to be everywhere and they're going to crush Waymo, which is owned by Alphabet, which is a $2.5 trillion behemoth of a company. And Tesla is just going to take control of this market somehow. For the life of me, I don't see it. I think going back to valuation, Elon, more so than maybe anybody on the planet, knows how to play the game, right? I read Tesla's latest earnings call transcript yesterday, and Elon had a quote in there about some of the milestones he's hoping that Tesla reaches over the next couple years. And he said, these are ambitious milestones, but if we hit them, we should be the most valuable company in the world. No other CEO is talking like that, right? No
Right.
other CEO knows how to rally the investor base as well as Elon does. But he does, and it works for him. That's why they're $1 trillion company. And if they were valued like any other car company, they'd be a $50 billion company, right?
Okay.
They deserve 20x the value because of Elon Musk, is what the stock market says.
Chris Cimarelli and I have talked about that same idea on this call before. And we both agree that if I mean, and this was back when Elon was still very heavily involved in Doge and all the government stuff with the Trump administration. But if Elon were to be in a position where he was forced out or left Tesla, it
Yeah,
would totally change the stock. I mean, the stock would drop a ton overnight because he is the stock.
it would be idiotic.
Yeah. I mean, but he is the stock though, is what I'm saying. And what you're saying is absolutely right, I think, where he knows how to play the game.
Yeah.
He does it probably just as good, if not better, than anybody else out there running a public company. Where he is kind of this mystical figurehead
Yeah.
who is seen as a futurist, who is seen as kind of all knowing, and and I think that's why Tesla gets this valuation that it gets because you have this huge personality at the helm of this giant company here,
Mhm.
and I think that the fact that he's polarizing is also more helpful than people think sometimes. I think one of the biggest mistakes that Elon has made hasn't been like I don't think it's the same that the mainstream thinks it is. Like Elon being too overactive on Twitter and constantly posting memes and playing video games and all that stuff. I don't think that's as
Mhm.
negative as people think it is. I think the most negative thing that he's done over the past year has been getting into politics and then
Go.
trying to spin it in a way where he's going to create some sort of middle of the road political party in
Yep.
a country and a world that has become more and more polarized and has carved out the middle. So he's trying to live in this space where you really can't live. I feel like him being, because back in the early days of Tesla, the right didn't like Elon and Tesla because they saw them as mooching off government subsidies and as this this leech of a company going after in this electric car niche that
Yeah,
didn't really
in the
need to be
oil
there.
industry.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they were comparing it to Cylindra, remember back in the early days?
Yeah.
That's what people thought about Tesla. And then he totally flipped the script on that. And now he's kind of abandoning that and going to this carved out middle area that doesn't really exist. And I think that's maybe a place where you can't survive in a political pop culture sense
Yeah.
in this country. But also on top of all that, Tesla is what I consider, and a lot of other people consider, the ultimate trading stock because it's so easy to play off of, maybe not easy, but it's very simple to play off these emotional extremes. Whenever Elon hate gets to 11 and the stock goes down, it always seems to be a good place to buy it for a short-term trade because it always seems to snap back. I mean, even right now, and I'll share
Mhm.
my screen. Um, I have Tesla pulled up right here. The the stock looks good. It doesn't look bearish at all. I mean, it looks like it's coiling here, and it looks like that we could, possibly see the high 400s, at some point in the near future. I mean, I can easily just draw some lines here and say like this stock needs to get going one way or another, and it will get going one way or the other fairly soon.
Mhm.
Right here, we're reaching the apex, of this coil in this stock right here, and to me right now, it's looking pretty bullish. And with all the negativity surrounding Tesla, I wouldn't be surprised in the short term to see this thing pop and get well above, the 430s and maybe even get to the 470s where it was rallying back in November. It might take a little more time, but to me, and I don't know how often you look at charts. I know you're not, like running through technicals like we are at the trading desk all the time, but to me, this looks pretty bullish. And whenever that kind of goes against the narrative, it piques my interest.
Well, maybe Gunnar, how you and I can be dangerous is like I match my fundamentals with your technical analysis, right?
Yeah.
The what I'm seeing on the horizon for Tesla, you've got two things, right? You've got the robotaxi rollout. I live in Austin, Texas. That's where robotaxis are only operating here right now.
Right.
They rolled out, I want to say, was it July? Um, and they were nowhere to be seen, right?
Mhm.
They were only in front of conveniently placed uh, news reporters and stuff so that they can snap the pictures. I have actually seen three robotaxis in the last week, which is huge, right? Because I'm just randomly driving around, so they're actually operating. So the first catalyst that I'm looking at would be that rollout.
Yeah.
Are they actually rolling out at scale here? And then can they start operating in other cities as well? The second thing is also was talked about on Tesla's last earnings call was an AI event, right? And talk about an event to rally that base. An AI event where Tesla talks about its humanoid robots and how it's using AI within Tesla, and then also the prospect that Tesla buys xAI, Musk's company that just bought Twitter. And
Yeah.
so those are the two things, an AI event and how well does Robotaxi actually scale?
Yeah. I think that's it. I think you nailed it right there. Have you been in a robotaxi? You just seen them?
No, I tried to. It's only available right now to Tesla influencers.
Oh,
And
okay.
as you can tell by my I would never touch Tesla with a 10-foot pole attitude. They don't want me in a Tesla robotaxi.
I guess
But
you're
I've
more of
been in
an
plenty of Waymos. I've been in an Aptiv. I've been in a Mobileye car. I've been in a few of them. So not robotaxi yet.
so yeah, I guess you're more of an Nvidia influencer. Maybe we can put you in that category. Um,
They got a car. I'll drive in it.
so A couple more things you mentioned in your Tesla piece with your dinner with the engineer, um, that I just wanted to hit on real quickly. Since we're talking about Elon, uh, your friend mentioned that Elon has become kind of a bottleneck. That's probably always been the case in Tesla, though, because he does seem like he's a controlling CEO. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but instead of pushing and making things go, he has a reputation for kind of slowing things down sometimes. Is that the impression?
Yeah, it seems like he wants a lot of those decisions to run through him. And so he is, the exact word was a single node in this decision-making tree that just slows down the process.
Yeah.
It doesn't help that Elon runs XAI,
Hmm.
was involved in politics, is starting the American Party or whatever it's called. He's got Neuralink, Boring Company, and I know, oh, SpaceX is the other big one. Um, and so he was vocally frustrated with the amount of decisions that only Elon can make. Um, and I don't think anybody can really argue that Tesla's a slow company.
Right.
They're still, one of the fastest first movers, best technology in any industry that they compete in. Um, just imagine how much faster that they could be if they didn't need Elon, who was also busy running five other companies to make certain decisions.
Yeah. 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 That's a good point. He must be tough to track down sometimes too. He seems to be everywhere and nowhere all at
Yeah,
once.
I'm sure he's got multiple planes.
Yeah.
He's got how many kids? He's got dozens of
I
kids.
don't I don't think anybody really knows the correct
Well, I don't think he'll say. But living in Austin, Texas, you know some of these things because you meet some of those people and they go, "Oh, you see that house right there? That's Elon's baby
number.
mama."
That's hilarious.
It's true.
So one more Tesla question for you. We'll move on to Nvidia because
Yeah.
I think we have a lot to talk about there. You mentioned too, and this didn't get its own bullet point in your piece, but I thought it was super interesting. This idea that Tesla's working hard to reduce their China dependence. Can you go into some of the things they're doing there?
Yeah. As you know, China just owns the supply chain with rare earths. Battery production in general runs through China at this point. Um, Elon has been more friendly to China. I guess that's for political purposes and to, save his current supply chain. And so after the gentleman that I had dinner with said that, oh yeah, I'm actually not working to extend battery range, I asked the obvious question, so what do you do?
Right.
And he's like, believe it or not, my big issue right now, and it's a Tesla-wide issue, is decreasing dependence on China with batteries. And so again, I don't like Tesla stock, but this is another potential business line for Tesla that nobody talks about. You will not see this probably anywhere on the internet. I haven't looked, but Tesla wants to vertically integrate its battery supply chain, own every step of the process. Do you think, I don't mean to, you know, throw Ford and GM under the bus again,
No,
but
it's fine.
Do you think Ford and GM could vertically integrate their battery supply chain?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah.
And so who would they go to if they can't go to China? They'd go to Tesla.
Yeah.
Hey, can we buy some product from you? Can you, build out your supply enough that we can actually buy from you? Maybe it's not Ford and GM that does that, but maybe it's, Lucid or some of those smaller EV cars to start. And so that could be a major business line for Tesla that nobody is talking about.
Yeah.
So, when you talk about Tesla's $1 trillion valuation, maybe part of that is a newfound battery business that nobody except the ultra insiders know about.
Yeah, it's possible.
Because in my mind, robotaxi shouldn't be $1 trillion business. If it is, then Alphabet should double in stock price, right? Um, because they're not getting any sort of credit for that. And so that was eye-opening to me. I'll do some research. I haven't really looked to see if anybody else is talking about it. That dinner happened on Thursday. Um, but what a major business development that would be.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I feel like, what it comes down to is, and there's been, while we've been talking, I've had my trading desk chat open, and there's a lot of different opinions about Tesla, and a lot of good debate going on there. And that's what this is about.
Mhm.
I wanted to have you on today and put this out there because I have conflicting views on Tesla too. And sometimes I can't see as clearly into the future, and it's good to have these opinions and discussions about these opinions and how they break out. Because when it comes down to it, like I've been dead wrong on a lot of fundamental stuff before, um, more often than I've been right, because it's so hard to see how these things are going to roll out. And so I think it's always a good mental exercise to just sort of just talk it out with somebody, especially somebody like you, Davis, who,
Yeah.
has their ear to the ground and has some good connections in this industry right here.
Mhm.
So bottom line for me, Tesla, I don't know if I want to own it right here, but I definitely would want to trade it. I know the options are a little pricey for us, so we probably won't be issuing any official recommendations on this one. However, I do think that it's looking pretty bullish if it can break and hold above like 360-ish. So we'll have to see how this resolves going forward. I don't think they have earnings again until it says about
Should
middle of
be two
October.
months.
So yeah, so we have some time here to see if this is going to move ahead of earnings. It could be very interesting. Let's move on to the other biggie here, a little uh, chip company called Nvidia. I don't know if anybody's heard of it.
Little $4 trillion stock.
Just a $4.4 trillion stock right here. Obviously, we've been in some summer chop um, for most of August. Right now, we've been in kind of a back and forth market, which is totally fine since we've had such a rip roaring summer up until this point right here. But we do have Nvidia earnings coming after the closing bell tomorrow. I think it would be foolish to say that no one cares about this. I think everybody's going to be watching this earnings announcement here. Um, I don't have a lot of super strong fundamental opinions about Nvidia, so I'm going to let you take it away in just a minute. I
Mhm.
just want to get my one thought about Nvidia out there right now, which I'm sure you have plenty to say about, and that is, what the heck does this company have to do to impress people right now? Because to me, it's starting to feel like Nvidia has gotten to the point where they're going to have to blow the doors off, with raising guidance, with beating the number by such a wide amount just to get a super big positive reaction in the stock. We were talking earlier and we looked it up. The implied move for the Wednesday night earnings report is about 7.5% right now. What do you think are the chances that Nvidia really blows this number out of the water and impresses people? And how do they do it?
Yeah, I think that is the question that people are asking right now. I actually don't think that that is the right question.
Okay.
Does does Nvidia need to blow this out of the water to keep their stock moving up into the right, or to,
Yeah.
keep the overall stock market afloat, right? Because obviously Nvidia is involved in every ETF and index and, et cetera. The thing that I go back to is Nvidia is actually one of the easier stocks to research, right? They sell the majority of their products, like 60%, to four companies: Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, Google.
Yeah.
And so you can actually see what they are saying in their earnings calls. They all report before Nvidia. They all actually already reported. And funny enough, they all increased CapEx, which are capital expenditures, which are long-term investments, aka Nvidia GPUs. Um, Again, every single one of them increased their numbers again, and they do this every single quarter. They've done this for 2 years, where they just continue to blatantly and openly, transparently tell investors, hey, like, the Google CEOs, yep, and we're going to spend, $100 billion on CapEx next year. That is up from 83 billion last year, whatever the number was. Um, they do that openly every single year, and they just did it again. And so you know that whether Nvidia beats or maybe misses, the likelihood of them missing is low. But maybe they do miss by a couple pennies, right? What Wall Street's expecting. What does that actually mean? They still have a line around the corner by companies, countries, everybody wants to get their hands on their products. Um, I heard this morning that there's 10-to-1 demand versus supply. I heard that this morning. And so, sure, let's say they miss by a couple pennies. Who cares? They still can't make enough of these GPUs to satisfy demand. And so next quarter, they're going to make even more money. Whether they beat that arbitrary Wall Street number to be determined, but this is a long-term play here. I've owned Nvidia for 7 years now, and I really started piling on when AI started. And I have this conversation every quarter, but I just reiterate the same thing. Like there's still a line around the corner, and Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, Alphabet just told you that like a
Right.
couple weeks ago. They actually said, actually, we want more of these things. You Last quarter we said we were only going to spend 100 billion this year. It's actually 110.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's everybody wants to call a turning point. That's where our minds
Yeah.
always go to. We always want to think about things in form of like, oh, this is the end of something or this is the beginning of something. When in reality, we're usually probably somewhere in the middle. I
Yeah.
think this is the truth about how markets are. And so you're saying that we are not in the ninth inning or anywhere close to that.
I, I
As
can't
far
see
as
how that's the case, Gunnar. And so basically with this AI rollout that we've seen right now, the Nvidia GPUs on the market are great for training,
Mhm.
right? They're training these AI models, ChatGPT, Claude, all of these. This next generation is better for reasoning, right? Which is the use case, right? We want these AI models to reason. That's the short term right there. The next step would be physical AI. All these autonomous vehicles that Elon wants to roll out,
Mhm.
Nvidia.
Right.
Um, Waymo, Nvidia. Humanoid robots, Nvidia. All of the competition that's also going to spur, because obviously it's not going to be just Tesla and Waymo. They're going to need Nvidia. This AI build out is probably, depending on what technologies you want to talk about, it could be decades long.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Nvidia is the only game in town. People can talk about AMD all they want, but
Well,
no
AMD,
one
the
wants
stock has
AMD.
looked just from a technical perspective, it had looked pretty bad, but it's starting to look a lot better these days. So
AMD.
you're still on the tune that Nvidia has no competition in your mind as of right now, or no serious competition.
They really don't. They really don't. And to give you a sense of that, I think off the top of my head, Nvidia is going to sell, let me do quick math, like $200 billion in these GPUs this year. AMD is going to sell like less than 10.
Yeah, so they're behind, is what you're saying.
They're over a year behind right now, but you know, NVIDIA's cadence is incredible. And then what makes NVIDIA so great and gives that company the moat that it has today is the software. It's CUDA that people don't talk about. It's the hardware and software combined. They are both best in class. They both, well, CUDA has a 10-year head start on AMD's ROCm software comparable.
Hmm.
And so that's millions of developers, thousands of companies, thousands of products built around Nvidia products and software that they're not just going to change overnight because AMD is cheaper. In fact, even even if AMD is cheaper, one, the products aren't as good, but you don't just look at the cost of a GPU. It's like buying a car. You don't just look at the cost of, buying a car off the lot. You need maintenance. You need, right, gas versus EV, right? You might save money by buying electric. Jensen, the CEO of Nvidia, has this quote where he said, even if our competitors' products are free, we would still be cheaper because they're more energy efficient, they're faster, that saves time, that saves developer hours, that lets, engineers go on to the next task and, win whatever AI race they're currently racing in. It's things like that that all come together that give NVIDIA this moat.
Yeah.
I'm not touching AMD stock. Just own NVIDIA. It's cheaper. It's faster growing. It's got a bigger moat. Um, and nobody's touching AMD's products either. I don't get that argument.
All right, that's fair.
Yeah,
I'm gonna keep peppering you with some of these because I'm playing some devil's advocate.
do
Uh,
it.
it seemed like the market got a little bit nervous, not scared because I don't see any fear in this market right now, really. But the market got a little bit nervous when Meta announced that it was laying off um, some folks from its AI division and some management from
Yeah.
there. Um, I assume that people are nervous about that because once again, they're looking for turning points. They're seeing that as the canary in the coal mine for, you know, the AI boom running a little too hot.
Yeah.
And I assume they're extrapolating that to Nvidia right now. How do you see that playing into everything you've been talking about, or do you not have an opinion about something like that?
Yeah, I've just been around too much where I know that all layoffs aren't a sign of the world is falling, right? Meta is one of the most powerful, profitable companies in the world right now. What these companies do is when they get into a new industry, they overhire, right, on purpose for speed purposes. And then once they, reach some sort of plateau or some area where they can cut staff, they do, right? Because they don't need all that staff that they previously needed to go from 0 to 1.
Hmm.
Um, Last night, I was talking to somebody. Google is doing the same thing. Google, and you're not going to read this anywhere either.
Ooh, all right.
Google sent out a letter to employees offering like a severance package. Hey, do you want to take, I don't know what it was, X amount of months of pay um, instead of us having to do layoffs? Because layoffs, they look bad, right? They
Right,
look
yeah,
bad. It's
yeah,
optics.
right.
Um, but at the end of the day, if your question's about NVIDIA and this, AI build out, the answer's already been told in the CapEx spending from Microsoft, Amazon, those companies.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. And um,
Also, just a counterpoint, if Meta and Google are potentially laying off people and offering these extravagant severance packages, they're fantastic. Um, Also, I learned last night that OpenAI is paying $1.5 million sign-on bonuses to engineers.
yeah,
So it goes both ways.
yeah, they haven't sent me one yet. I'm still waiting for that.
No, I picked the wrong industry.
So, well, hey, well, also maybe AI is taking the AI people's jobs. You ever think of that?
Could be. Zuckerberg's got a quote that says like 50% of Meta's code is AI.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
That is crazy.
I mean, there have to be some growing pains. I mean, just related to AI in general amongst big tech. I think we're already kind of seeing them, right? I mean, there's been this colossal shift over the past couple of years to building it out, and now they're in a position where, I mean, they probably need fewer human brains to do this work, and then kind of there's this transitional period, almost like, just as a really simplistic analogy, like you would think like offices going through like transitional periods when you know personal computers became more available and there wasn't a need for this big support staff of secretaries and everybody else. They could all basically be done on computers. I mean, is that kind of where we are now, maybe in the cycle of AI adaptation in Silicon Valley?
I think so, especially at these major companies that are on the frontier of AI, right? They're building it. They know what it's capable of. They trust it, right? They built it in-house. Meta built their own, AI in-house. Same with, those other hyperscalers.
Hmm.
The thing is, the everyday enterprise has not even scratched the surface on what AI could do for their business too, right? And so maybe some companies are feeling it. I don't think that it's anything major. I think if anything, right, just like you thought the internet or whatever invention was going to kill jobs, I don't have a coding background, but I have used AI to learn how to code or just do it for me,
Right.
right? And so talk about maybe software engineers losing their jobs up front.
Hmm.
Think about on the back end though, now everybody's a coder. Everybody can
Yeah.
build companies, ideas, games, whatever you want
Yeah,
at your computer.
I feel like that's one of the traps people fall into is they say like, oh, this is going to kill jobs. I think it's just going to change what the jobs are, really, and it's probably going to increase them when all is said and done. But it's just going to take a while for the smoke to clear because we really can't see that yet.
People can play around on their computer with, current versions out there. It's incredible what you can do just by yourself, typing into a command bar, build me a website that looks like this and give me three tabs that say this and
Yeah.
link to this. And then here's all the information that I want on each tab. Things like that.
Yeah.
10 seconds, done. That previously took days, weeks, and cost you hundreds or thousands of dollars to get a developer to do that. You can do it in 10 seconds online.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. It's crazy. It's crazy to me because I mean, I remember in college, like, like learning how to do stuff like that and how frustrating it was for, a non-coder to go through and, try to build up a blog and that sort of thing. And now just enter some prompts and magically it looks really good.
Yep. To build my first blog, it took me days and it still looked bad.
Well, yeah, mine, but this was early days of internet. Mine didn't look good either. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's crazy to imagine like how it's just knocking down these barriers to entry in so many different parts of the internet.
Yeah.
Um, just going back to the stock too, like I think just from a sentiment and technical perspective, what Nvidia really has going for it right now is, well, the fact that it didn't go anywhere for a year. Well, it went everywhere and nowhere. Let's put it that
Mhm.
way. It traded in a very wide, choppy range for an entire year when it got a little too hot in the kitchen for it in the summer of 2024, and it peaked out here in June around 140 bucks. It it came back and tagged that area around 140, 150 a few times post-election leading into January, and then it fell back down all the way to 88 bucks, right down to the bottom of its range here during the whole Liberation Day tariff fiasco scare back
Mhm.
in the spring. It's fought its way back off that bottom, obviously, and it's broken out to new all-time highs. It broke out in the end of June, and it's extended from that breakout, and it's posted a really nice rally off of those lows down in the mid 80s all the way up to 181 bucks. It's been an incredible run, but I feel like this period right here, between the April bottom in the market to today, compared to this period, which doesn't look like much, but it really was something, when it started taking off, when the AI boom really, I guess, took hold and captured everybody's imagination right here in January of 2024.
Yep.
up through June 24. This was the entire market was Nvidia during
It was.
Q1 and Q2 of 2024.
It
It
was.
literally dragged the averages higher. Breadth wasn't that great, but Nvidia masked all of that. And it was the only stock people wanted to talk about with good reason. I mean, it was the zeitgeist of early 2024 and coming off the first year of that new bull market off of the 2022 bear lows right there. I mean, it was the stock, and arguably that hype continued throughout this choppy period. But this rally right here from the 90s up to 181, I would say relatively silent um, since then. Yes, I mean, obviously there are stories about it, and you see Nvidia mentioned a lot on CNBC, but compared to the volume, which was at 11 over Nvidia during the first half of 2024, I would say we're at like a 2 maybe right now.
Mhm.
And I feel that that is probably a tailwind. I feel like that probably could help ignite the stock and move it higher if it does post a positive reaction to earnings here, because I feel like a lot of folks who maybe got in late, like not everybody was like you, Davis, and buying this thing, 7, 8, 9 years ago. Um, I think a lot of people buy at these emotional extremes, which is, how I look at the market here, and they
Yeah.
tend to buy at these peaks right here, and then they have to have the wherewithal to hold through these troughs. And I feel like a lot of these people probably got shaken out. They probably, if they didn't get scared out, they got worn out of their positions right here. And so we've probably seen some shareholder turnover. And I think that if the volume does get turned up and things start getting more interesting, and maybe people start realizing that uh, Davis is right, and we're not at the end of this bubble. We're somewhere in the middle. Maybe, I'm not saying bubble in a derisive way either. I'm saying bubble as in boom. Maybe we're somewhere in the middle of this boom, and it's going to continue for many more innings. Um, I feel like that's only a positive for this stock. I don't know if you feel like you're taking the market's temperature the same way I am, but that's where I stand on where sentiment is for a stock like this right now.
Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe it's just because I pay attention to the stock so much that I think everybody's talking about it. But I do think that this is a more subdued earnings release tomorrow night. They report earnings tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Um, this doesn't have the same media attention that previous ones have had.
Okay.
And
There you go.
maybe that's just the case where going back to the hyperscalers that talk about their CapEx, they are more transparent now than they were a year or two ago. They weren't, you know, completely, they were giving CapEx forecasts, but they didn't say what percentage was going to Nvidia.
Right.
Now a lot of work has been done where if a company announces 100 billion in CapEx,
Right.
you can basically assume that 50% goes straight to Nvidia. Um, and so maybe there's reasons that these forecasts, or I'm sorry, that these earnings dates aren't the big market moving news that they once were. Um, it's also been going on for 2 years. You know,
Right.
I've had this conversation every quarter for 2 years. And, time after time, NVIDIA just continues to report a blowout quarter, or if they've hit the numbers or in line or they missed by a penny, but I don't even think they've missed by a penny. Um, they'll go back on the call and Jensen Huang, the first thing he says, every quarter he's got a new adjective for demand, whether it's spectacular or fantastic. There's going to be a new one tomorrow night, whatever it
Right.
is. And then people are going to go, oh, you know what? They missed by a penny, but demand is still outstripping supply 10 to 1. Should probably buy the stock.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because it's like, or when going back to the hyperscalers and how they talk about their investment in AI. I think it kind of has to go along with what the market wants to hear too. I mean, and I don't say this in a negative sense when talking about like Google and Microsoft. I'm talking more about the companies that aren't so involved in AI, who are just sort of throwing out buzzwords because that's what people want to
Yeah.
hear during the call. But if you were, even if you were like a, like the CEO of Google or Meta or whatever, like in 2023, before I guess AI really captured the market's imagination, people kind of they didn't want to hear it. So why would you make a big deal out of CapEx spending on AI on a conference call? Like, remember
Mhm.
back when Meta, I think this was middle of 2023, maybe late 2023, when Zuckerberg was unveiling their metaverse, and they had those goofy characters, those like cartoony looking characters,
Oh, it looked awful. I remember.
and it looked bad, and everybody joked on it and was like,
Yeah.
Meta lost their way, Zuckerberg doesn't know what he's doing, all this other stuff. And like all these great companies go through these cycles like that. But
Yeah.
I mean, it did seem like a folly. It's the AI felt like a folly up
Hmm.
until the point where it didn't, you know?
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden it becomes
It
the
was
main item that everybody needs to have on, they're at least a toe in, for these
absolutely.
hyperscalers, much more than a toe. But like it's amazing how quickly those things change, and then how people have to talk about it during these calls.
Yeah. At the end of the day, a CEO's job is to increase shareholder value, right? And we saw this with blockchain back in the day where companies just slapped blockchain into their names or said, "Oh yeah, we're investing in blockchain or we're going to put our business on the blockchain." It's the same with AI in a sense now where, if you mention AI and there's even studies about the rise in AI being mentioned on earnings calls and stuff like that,
Yeah.
companies get this, valuation bump. Um, but then going back to a previous point that you had, it was November of 2022, ChatGPT got released to the public and it was fantastic, right? You wanted it to do your math homework, it could do that. You wanted it to,
Yeah.
how many people live in Baltimore, Maryland? It could tell you just like that, faster than Google. You didn't have to click on links, stuff like that.
Mhm.
That was when AI crossed that line and became, all right, this isn't a fugazi that companies are just dumping money into. Like,
Right.
this is useful. And it's even more useful today. It just
But
keeps
you
progressing.
see, you say that, like, but I feel like that the cultural awareness of it was at least a year behind on something like that. I mean, what you're saying
Until
is
it hit the mainstream.
yeah, I don't think it hit the mainstream until end of 23, really. I mean, like people were starting to get aware of it in the fall of 23, but I
Yeah.
don't think it was, and I think the main gauge of that is Nvidia price.
I'm
Like,
sure, yep. I'm sure you can overlay ChatGPT users and Nvidia stock price, and it looks pretty
yeah,
similar. Or at
nobody
least
can,
it's got that initial bump up. What's
yeah.
that, January 24? It's
January 24, I think that was when,
probably around there, yeah.
yeah, because that was also when the little AI stocks, especially ones that had AI and like the company name and stuff like that. That was when they first started bubbling a
Yeah.
little bit higher. So I feel like that was the herd's first like big aha moment that like this is something
Hmm.
big and important, because before that, I think like you said, it was people whose noses are a little too close to the screen who were like, this is going to be big, and it
Hmm.
just took a while for everybody else to catch up.
Yeah.
And now we're in a spot where people are, I think, even though there's been a bit of a lull as far as like I guess the hype meter goes on something like this, I think people are still looking for like, okay, what's this company doing as far as AI is concerned. And of course, I feel like it's also completely branching out too. I mean, we've seen what's happened with the quantum computing stocks, and we're probably still, I mean, anybody who is a lot smarter than me, and that's a big pool of people, but like anybody who really is a lot smarter than me in relation to like quantum computing says we're like at least a decade out from doing anything serious with that, whereas AI we're a lot closer. But these little technology subsectors are really like capturing uh, traders and speculators' imagination, and that's why we're seeing these little mini booms, in these different tech baskets.
Yep.
I feel like AI has been, and Nvidia, directly have been the spark that's ignited a million different, you know, rallies throughout the more speculative areas of the stock market, and it all started with
Yeah.
that one moment.
At the end of the day, AI is going to accelerate quantum and autonomous driving and, whatever industry there is, right? AI will just accelerate that. I think what we need to happen will be for companies to say, hey, we've implemented, AI into our everyday business practices. We're saving X amount of money, right? That justifies higher spending. Meta's done that. Meta's been very vocal about how AI is already improving their advertising business, and they've seen marginal improvements in their advertising business. Google's done the same. We've only scratched the surface on enterprise, though, right?
Mhm.
90% of companies don't actually utilize AI. They say that they do. Oh yeah, we got
Right,
a ChatGPT subscription for everybody, but what are they doing with that? And so I think over the next few years, that'll be something to look at. But then, you know, going further, like I already talked about, then you get into reasoning, you get into physical AI. Nvidia is still at the center of all of that too. People seem to just think that AI is ChatGPT. It's more than that. It's got massive industries right behind it that are going to rely on Nvidia chips for years to come.
right.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny, like you mentioned the whole AI stuff. It's reminiscent of retailers just slapping .com on their name during the 90s, market bubble.
Blockchain.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Long Island iced tea blockchain or whatever it was from back in the day.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Overstock. And yeah, we're putting Bitcoin on our balance sheet now. And,
Right.
because it's a hedge against inflation. Like, great. Are you doing that for that reason, or you get a valuation premium for associating yourself with Bitcoin? It's the latter.
Right. Well, this has been good. This has been a lot of really good info you've given us, Davis. I have a lot to chew on when it comes to Nvidia earnings tomorrow. I'll give you the last word here. Uh, and this is just for fun. I'm not going to hold you to this. I'm not going to bring you on next time and be like, you got this wrong.
Yeah.
But what do you think the reaction is going to be? And where do you think Nvidia stock is going to be at the end of the week after we have a little bit of earnings shakeout and
Yeah.
and folks really decide on what they think of the quarterly report and where this stock is going? Where do you think it's going to be by Friday afternoon at 5?
Hey, I'm not like a short-term trader, but
That's
the
okay. It's
last,
just for fun.
just for fun, the last couple of quarters, it's been flat.
Hmm.
I think it's probably notched down a little bit. Probably see it in this chart here. It's notched down a little bit and come back to life.
Yep. I see that. We got a little pop from the earnings last time, and then
Yeah, I'm
it was
not
kind of
buying
stuck in a
options on this
downtrend.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not buying call options on this one
Okay.
for a pop. They're too expensive. I think it's flat. If it's down, am I buying more? I already own so much of it. Um, do I buy more? Probably not, but I think if somebody doesn't own this, it's an opportunity to get back in.
So if this stock ends the week at 170, you would say that's a buy.
Honestly, yeah. And
Okay.
so I don't think you asked me, but I have a price target on Nvidia right now,
Yeah, give it to me.
$300.
300 bucks. That's
And
really not that crazy.
I think that's conservative.
Yeah.
And so we've had this conversation. I know we got to go. We've had this conversation about, how long is this CapEx demand, Nvidia spending going to go on? Well, it's been 2 years. I think it's going to be at least another 2, 3+ years. And so if we're here next year, Nvidia is supposed to earn $6 a share in earnings. You slap a 50x multiple on that, which is cheaper than it trades at today, you get $300 a share right there.
Yeah.
Um,
Not too crazy. Maybe some volatility in between, right?
well, it's happened. Oh, maybe some volatility in between. So 300, I think that's low, but
All right. Well, you hang on to those 1,000 shares of Nvidia or whatever it is. I don't know the exact number.
somewhere around there.
Some folks were asking in chat, but yeah, he owns a big chunk of Nvidia here, so it'll be very interesting to see what happens. And we'll have
Yeah.
you back on soon to talk more about this. Uh, Davis, it's been a pleasure. I always love chatting with you on camera or off camera about the markets. And everybody, if you haven't already done so, go back in the chat and be sure to sign up for the Million Mission if you haven't already. It's Davis's investing diary where he's chronicling his romp to $1 million through his longer term portfolio. He does some options trades. He does some longer term stuff. You should check him out, definitely. And we'll have him on again. I think judging by the chat, everybody really liked this this convo right here. And so we'll have you on, hopefully to talk about some more positive developments in AI and Tesla. And we'll see where Nvidia is too, since you seem to have some interest in that stock as well.
Yeah, look forward to it.
All right,
Thank
man.
you.
Thanks a bunch, guys.